Hey, welcome to the Allocator governance call taking place for the Filecoin Plus program on June 24th, 2025. Let's share those slides and take a look at what we have on the agenda for this call. So we have four big things to make you aware of. Number one, check in on DataCap Refresh. So if you have an application that's in the process, we'll let you know where it stands, answer any questions you have on it. Number two, there's a brand new proposal that Galen's going to walk us through regarding enterprise on-ramps and how those deals will be set up and what you can expect if you're developing that tool set. Third is we'll check on the application process. As a reminder, the applications are open until July 11th. So this is your chance to turn in an application if your organization wishes to become an onboarding pathway. So we'll talk about the KYC process, check in on emails, and just answer any questions you may have. And lastly, we had an issue on the last call with retrieval showing 0, making sure that that link is shared and we could help with any questions you have. As always, shoot a hand up. We'll be happy to help. Slides should be in the chat as well as Slack, and we'll take you through it. So this call is taking place on June 24th. If you want anything to the agenda, please follow this link and we'll include it in the next call, which is scheduled to take place on July 8th. Feel free to follow this link if you're watching, and that will set you up with adding this to your calendar, and you can pull that. Quick check-in on metrics. We've had a busy 2 weeks. So we had 10 new clients come on board. They got 161 petabytes of data cap among those existing clients and new clients. And we've seen around 80 active allocators. So this is great. A lot of activity in the network and hoping to keep that going as we slide right along. DataCap Refresh. So ND Labs, Arrow, in case I don't see you on this list, but if there's anything you were curious about, we have 8 refreshes that are currently in process with the min right now. One's currently on the the community watchdog taking a look. There were no applications that were flagged or removed for organizations since the last call. Thank you. Good work. And you might have seen the issue updated from Amin recently with the organizations and the data cap that you're getting. Any questions, please let us know. Oh, Galen, floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, jumping in here. We're sort of in this transition time from round 5 allocators going into round 6. And so with those kind of transitions, there's always a bit of some hurdles and maybe some stumbling as we kind of go from closing out a previous process and onboarding people. So with that, the ones over here that are showing that were recently refreshed, all of those teams need to have a round 6 application submitted. And what we're doing is we're checking that round 6 application. We're comparing it to performance and reputation and things like that. And then we're taking these compliance refresh amounts and saying, does this apply to this round 6 application? And so the goal there is, for these teams, complete their application process for round 6, review that, and then we will activate them at this rate, and then they'll move forward with that history and reputation. So if you're on this list, or if you're finishing a compliance review and hoping to get that amount before moving forward, that's not going to happen. You will need to apply for round 6, and we will look at that application and apply this volume to your new first round 6 amount. So that's just some clarification there on how we're kind of making this transition. We really want to be rolling everyone into that new round 6 structure that we've been talking about.
Nice. Round 6 it is. We have a lot of updates on round 6, but Galen, since those vocal cords are all warmed up, can I hand this back to you for the new
Yes.
proposal?
Me. All right. So enterprise on-ramps. We've gone through quite a few iterations of this program since I've been here. The early days, we had 12 notaries. Then we said there's a market need. We really kind of want to understand a certain behavior pattern. We want to drive the subsidy towards that. We want to incentivize that. So we started looking at large data sets. How do we onboard these very large data sets? And then it's evolved from there. The next kind of evolution that we're looking at are these enterprise on-ramps. And so this is a combination of teams that are in some capacity, they are providing a service and there's money exchanging. So this is different than, the teams that are out there onboarding readily available, very large public open data sets, and kind of doing this manual diligence process and taking these public data sets and storing them, for free. This is really targeted towards teams that are offering these paid services and bringing kind of paid client data to the network. And so it's that combination of both. They are an enterprise, that there's some amount of, money being exchanged for services, and that they are an on-ramp, that they are bringing data onto the Filecoin network. So we want to say those teams don't necessarily fit or work very well in the existing structure of either the manual diligence or the market-based, or the automated, certainly not the automated. So the proposal came around, work that we did at various dev summits and calls that we've had and brainstorming sessions, work with some of these teams that have had a hard time in one of the existing pathways. And the goal here is really, as it says over there, we have these kind of 4 large buckets of how to qualify, these large categories where a team should be able to show that they are a legitimate enterprise, right? This isn't designed for individuals. This isn't designed for someone who is just working as a data preparer, as a side project or something. This is really for teams that can pass some level of KYB, know your business, legitimate audit. And so we're figuring out what that full audit structure looks like, and we've been prototyping this with some existing teams. And so, with this whole proposal, there's areas where we're still defining and experimenting how we'll do all of this. The next main area is around network utility. This has always been core to Filecoin Plus. It is a subsidy that is meant to drive network utility. It is not just disk coin. This is really how do we build a decentralized and distributed data storage network, and what are the pathways to make that a reality. So this is about having real clients, real data, real onboarding. What are the anti-collusion metrics that we need to put in place to avoid specifically self-dealing or just spinning disks with self-paid zeros and ones without real clients or real data. Next main category is around client readiness. This isn't for teams that just have an idea. This isn't for teams that are saying, we've got 2 guys, we've been in the ecosystem, or we're from another ecosystem, and we have an idea and we want to get it approved. We have an experimental meta allocator pathway for that. If you're at the MVP stage, if you've just got kind of a pitch, at that point, you're more in that category of experimental, getting that 1 PIB of DataCap to start to build that tooling, or build that on-ramp. This is for teams that have a legitimate runway. They are ready to take clients. They have clients in a sales funnel. They have a mechanism for onboarding this data. They have contracts and relationships in place. So what do we need to see to actually have that reliable client readiness? And then security. With all of these things, we want to understand if you are a legitimate company, if you are offering a legitimate service, what are the different security mechanisms that you're using, both to protect your clients, to protect your project partners like SPs you're working with, to protect the broader ecosystem. How do we understand, your security and compliance, kind of regulatory risk? So those are the main kind of eligibility requirements and kind of the purpose. Can you click to the next slide, please? Thank you. So for now, in this proposal, we came up with, well, we need a process for how people will apply, and then an implementation plan for how we're going to get this across the finish line. As with all things in Filecoin Plus, this is still a proposal. We want to hear, where do we need to add more definition? Where do we need to tweak? So far, we've gotten, I think, 1 comment on the proposal issue itself. So would love to see some more, either in support of this, or more questions or areas or ideas or solutions where we can add more. But currently, the proposal is that we'll have an application submission. As with all these things, you gotta apply, you gotta give us some amount of information about what's going on. This is potentially going to be similar to the allocator application process where it might be a form, that creates something on GitHub. We're figuring out the specific details, but then we've talked about putting together some kind of enterprise on-ramp meta allocator, EOMA, committee. And that committee might have people from the client success working group. It might have, various developer advocates, as well as people from the governance team or existing Filecoin Plus community members who are looking at these applications to do those audits and perform that kind of vetting. Like I said, it's those four main categories. Are they client ready? Are they a legitimate enterprise? Are they providing network utility? What's the paid service? What kind of data are they bringing to the network? What is the on-ramp mechanism? From there, there would be these different diligence things we want to review. And one of the main issues here in this diligence that I want to call out is that one around payment verification. This has been a really sticky wicket, to use, I don't know, probably a British term. This has been a difficult thing. Filecoin natively, the F05 actor, was designed in such a way that you would put a deal payment into that deal, and that amount would kind of act as this collateral that would unlock over the life of the deal, that would protect the interest of the storage provider and the client. We've had a lot of friction with clients not wanting to learn all of the technical depth that it takes to natively use Filecoin, and with storage providers doing a lot of business development and investing and locking a lot of money and liquidity into this network, and not wanting to lock up those client deals even further. And so we're seeing these teams where they're building a legitimate pathway where they're creating a service that kind of white labels the Filecoin experience. So their clients don't necessarily need to come to GitHub, apply for DataCap in the traditional sense. Their clients may not even be using Filecoin as far as their clients are concerned. The client may be using whatever the service is. The service provider is then saying, I'm going to go tell you who my clients are. I'm going to show you the diligence. I'm going to do that. One of the problems, though, then is how do we prove payment is happening? Part of what's happening in a lot of crypto spaces is this question around, economic value accrual, maximum economic value, things like that. If this is a real data storage service layer, then payment is happening somewhere. And we want to be able to prove that. That's why we work in blockchain. We care that payment is happening to prove to the two members of the interaction as well as the rest of the market. So we have this need for payment verification, and we're trying to figure out what are all the different potential ways, as well as the first minimum viable way that these enterprise services are going to prove that there's payment. So we're looking at some options there. There's some interesting things happening with the Filecoin stablecoin. I'm excited about that. There's some interesting things happening with Filecoin web services and some standards coming out of that. But regardless of what pathways we go down, there will need to be payment verification, proof of payment that happens for these teams, for these clients, for these services. From there, once we've seen enough and we're ready to approve these and we're ready to activate one of these on-ramps, our current proposal is that there would be two options for the amount of DataCap they'd be applying for. One is an overall runway. We'd say, what is your 6-week runway of usage? You need to show us evidence that you've got some clients, you've got users, you've taken in some payment, you have some of these contracts, you anticipate that your runway. And again, if you're building a legitimate business, being able to do these runway calculations is par for the course in communicating with investors. You need to know who your monthly active users are, what your throughput is going to be. You need to be able to predict that. And those things change, right? We get that. Businesses grow, they land new clients, they shrink, they don't quite hit their metrics, but you need to come to us and say, here's our expected initial 6-week runway, and that'll be a moving window. And so one allocation tranche type would be that kind of runway amount. The other would be for a single specific client. That's a team coming and saying, we have only 4 very large clients in our funnel, and we want to land those 4. We need to get approval for each one because each one is a significant part of our capacity, our usage. So in that amount, we would say, great, let's, show us how we can verify that. What's the audit? What's the diligence? Who is the client? What can we see? And then let's activate, if this is a client for, 100 PIBs of DataCap and 5 copies, you're asking for 500 PIBs for a single project client. If we can verify enough information and prove that, let's approve that client project for that 500 PIBs. We also may see teams that want to do both. They may say our expected overall runway is around this band of usage, but we've also got 1 or 2, very large clients that we're trying to land. So we would see kind of both of those applications. From there, there's typical things of, monitoring. Is the usage accurate? Are the payments landing the way that we expected? Can we continue to prove and verify this native utility payment in Fill? And then how do we review, renew, revoke, manage disputes? So with that, we're kind of at the early initial phase 1 foundation of forming who's that committee, what are the different application tools that we need, what are the different ways we can handle payments and verify them, what are the ways that we're going to either outsource these audits. So we're at that kind of design phase, and this is where we would love to get some more feedback and buy-in, and then we want to pilot it. And we've got a couple teams that are already in the ecosystem that we think would be a good fit for this program, and it's going to be a pretty small initial cohort while we work out, how did the audit process work? How did the approval process work out? How are we doing this verification? And we may find out that we really need to add more support and tooling around that payment, different dashboards and different APIs where people can connect us to external, transactions that are happening. So that's what we want to learn in that pilot phase. And then we want to get to, ideally, if this is working, a broader rollout where we can, scale up and add more teams. And again, these things may change. We may see that it's only going to be 10 or 15 teams in the ecosystem for the foreseeable future because that's the scale that we're talking about. And we don't need to do a large rollout because we're not expecting 80 of these types of teams. So we'll see kind of what that metric turns into, but that's currently the overall proposal. Oh, one other thing to say while I'm on the recording with the allocations, as I talked about those 2 potential pathways, one of the big things that we're pushing on is using more smart contracts. We've had a lot of great development work in how the client contracts, as well as the allocator contracts, the meta allocator contracts, those allow us to put more guardrails on those DataCap tranches. For a client contract, the allocator is able to say, I'm going to put this DataCap in a client contract that has a certain set of permissions. And then if I need to revoke it, I don't need to start a whole thing that's going to involve multiple allocators and the root key holders. I just revoke it from that contract. And that client contract is the thing holding it rather than a more traditional or legacy F1 on-chain client address, where the tooling is just really limited in what we can remove from a client address. So with that, we're looking at additional guardrails we can put in place for the overall runway. We're going to be able to, say, okay, you've got this amount as an allocator. Can we look at some smart contract tooling that would allow us to throttle that usage over time in a more automated way, rather than us needing to go in and review and revoke? Similarly, with the single client approvals, if you are coming to us and saying it's this client, and it's only going to go to these storage provider IDs, that's the pre-approved partnership pair. And we can, work to build a contract that says, great, for this client. Because if we're saying, something like 500 PIBs of DataCap potentially for a very large project, we want to have guardrails on that allow us to say, well, we've really only approved this project for this specific use case. It isn't a slush fund where you've got 500 PIBs to do with whatever satisfies your business. So that's where we're trying to say of how much granularity and control do we need. Question in the chat from Eric. EOMA is the enterprise on-ramp meta allocator. So it's enterprise on-ramp, EO, and MA meta allocator. So we're keeping with the sort of manual diligence, the experimental pathway meta allocator, that abbreviation style. Okay, that was an easy question. Any any other questions or hands or discussion points? And I'm not sure how much time we have. And if we want to save those till the end, I'll pass it back to K Ray as our facilitator.
We always have time for questions or comments. Feel free. All right. Hey, this is just a quick update for you guys on the call. Let's just check in on the applications. As a quick friendly reminder, if you're an existing allocator, you should have this in by July 11th. So I think right now we have 37 applications that have completed KYC. We'll talk about those as we go on board. And I think one of the next steps that I'll do is reach out to the organizations that we have not seen an application come from, make sure that they're tracking it. If you're on this call, this doesn't apply to you, but this is a friendly reminder. If you haven't done so, the July 11th date is the timeline. We shared this slide on the last call. I saved it. Just saved it in case you want to take a look again. Just go to the apply.allocator.tech. It opens up an Airtable. You fill out your information for your org. You complete your KYC, and then we'll get back to you. So let's talk about that KYC right now. Right now, be sure of a couple points. When you're submitting the KYC, please be sure to follow the link that's connected to your application. The reason for this is this will connect your organization to the KYC. If you follow a different link for whatever reason, it can just lead to some complications. So just a little friendly plug when you go to the allocator. But this is a real important thing. Right now, we've seen some applications come through and they'll list a generic email address, GG, MPG. As we go forward, you have to make sure that you're linking it to your organization. I see MPG's hand. I'll pause, then we'll come back and kind of finish this. MPG, floor is yours.
Thank you, Carrie. Just wanted to, as we operate and have seen different issues with the KYC process, so it's not just clicking the link in your application, but we've seen people and there is a bug, there is a fix that is being currently deployed for it. So hopefully it won't be long that this is even possible. But basically, if you click on your link and then your session expires, so like you click on the link, you go do something else, make yourself a dinner, come back, session expired, and then you refresh, it does not link to your application. So what you need to do if your session expires, you need to go back to either the dashboard or GitHub and click on that link again that has the application ID in it, and that way it will link. So just to make sure that that's the most common bug there or problem.
Great call out. Thank you for that. And then just the last thing that we've seen too, if you list an email organization that's not tied to the org, you're going to get a reach out and it's just going to be saying, we need to verify your connection to the org. Just a friendly reminder, if you don't happen to have an email connected to the org, I realize that can happen. The only thing that we're going to have to do is just verify that you actually speak for that org. And the reason for this is just prevention of fraud and just to make sure that if you say you're with this organization, you really are. Email is a real simple way to do that. But if you don't have that capability, expect to reach out from me shortly and trying to verify that. And then the last is MPG said, we've heard some feedback on the KYC process. Thank you for just letting us know. So LendyMy, a few others that have hit this, just let us know and we'll kind of troubleshoot it. The main thing we're looking at is like the browser, does the ID match, does the VPN? And if we can troubleshoot it back, we can give you some feedback like MPG just shared. If not, then we could bubble this up. So if you encounter any resistance or roadblocks or issues, please let us know and we'll get back and help you as we can. And the last is if you're on this call and you turn in your application, when you come to the apply.allocator dashboard, you'll see that the KYC, once it's completed, will convert over to governance review. That's on me now. So I've been going through these applications. What I'm doing is I'm verifying the organization and linking it back. So if you were an allocator in cycles past, I'm taking all of the refresh data, all of the feedback that you got from that refresh and tying it to your application. And then I'm kind of building out what's changed, what's new, and does this have what it takes? Does it have a bookkeeping plan? Does it have all the contact information? And anything missing, I'll be reaching out to you. So again, if you see governance review, you're just kind of in that cycle while I come through and give you like all the basics. But if there's anything needed, I'll reach out with the contact information and kind of come back with you on that. And so with that, we wanted to make sure that you were aware of essentially the new enterprise on-ramps, making sure that the DataCap refreshes are on your radar, understanding the KYC steps and the 37 organizations that have gone through. I'm going to turn the floor over to any questions or anything you want to talk about. Complete floor is yours. Well, sometimes we have lots, sometimes we don't. This could be one of those times we don't. But here's the good news. If anything comes into your mind, please feel free to post it. And I also just wanted to say a big thank you. Eric, I think you're on the call. I saw yours. Thank you so much. On the call last week, you had kind of flagged the issues with retrieval. You took the time to make that post in Phil Plus. And I just wanted to say how much that meant that you took the time to do that write-up. So thank you for that. Pleasure as always. And as I was saying, thank you. I just see that there's a question from Fiona. I'll read it out loud. Hi, Kevin. Sorry to interrupt. Never. Well, sorry for that. I was waiting for that interrupt. I just wanted to follow up on the coin summer allocation issue the last time the data cap was mistaken. My goodness, Fiona, I thought that that was all cleared up. What I'll do is I'll kick a thread off with the internal teams and see what's going on. I thought that we had fixed your address and I thought that we had routed that. Thanks for flagging. Thanks for coming.
I think, and yes, we'll check internally, but I think that we needed Coin Summer to apply in round 6 because we needed the application under the new round 6 in order to have the tooling to send that amount. But we'll double check. So make sure that there is a round 6 application at apply.allocator.tech. And then we'll also see, because it may have been that it was removed from the previous address, but then we needed that round 6 application in order to send it to the correct one.
Fiona, I'm multitasking. I'm messaging Fort Neo right now, and I'll follow up on that. I'll plus a min in, and then that way we can kind of get you the help you need. So check your Slack. You'll have a message from me right now. See what's going on.
And I just did also a quick check, and it looks like there might be a submitted application, but it needs KYC. So if the application on apply.allocator.tech has a blue KYC button, then that team needs to complete KYC. And I believe that's application number 888. So there'll be a link on the dashboard to complete KYC.
Oh, and if you do have issues with your application when you're reporting it, please include, especially if you have used some either not very distinct, and especially if it's not connected to your organization email address. Please include the email address that you use and the application number, because we are having a really hard time figuring out who is it that on Slack is X and on the application is Y, and used an email m@gmail.com.
Great point. Fiona, I just messaged Fort Neo. Please let me know, and then that way we can run this down. Hopefully not a day goes by that we can't get it. So I think just the round 6 refresh application doing the KYC, we could funnel that up. But check Slack, you have a message from me to the help you need. All right, I'll say it again. Is there anything anybody would like to flag, talk about, or discuss? Wonderful. Well, then, as always, thanks for being on the call. Galen, MPG, as always, thanks for the input that you guys shared. Eric, thanks for the post. Fiona, thanks for letting us know about that issue. We'll get that rundown for you. All right. Next call will be at 0200 UTC. Thanks, everyone. Hey, we're on the second call for the Phil Plus program. We forgot to start the recording right away. I'm here with Origin, Sweet Kenneth, and we're looking up you said 942?
912.
912.
Yeah.
912. Swing this. Right. Gotcha, guys. So it looks like, yeah, the KYC is still in progress. Let me share the screen.
Yeah.
So what was it that happened with yours, just so we can learn from your experience and make sure that others get okay?
Right. So initially, I used my driver's license to register the application. Uh, it just said KYC failed. And then Martha mentioned that because the driver license does not have an expiry, so I have to use identification with expiry. So I used my identity card, but it still did not make it. Uh, So uh, I had the conversation and then Mata in the Zephyr team. So I had a conversation with them. I said that should I use passport? Then he said, yeah, maybe try passport. So I tried my passport, but it still fails. And then on the end of the verifications, he said that sometime it was due to the fact that my documents did not have expiry, and sometimes it was due to the fact that I failed the liveliness test. Overall, I did around like about 20 or slightly over 20 registration of the KYC process. And yeah, it just all lead to the same conclusion. I think most of the later ones that I did is they fail the liveliness test.
Awesome. I'm looking at the application submitted now. Public open data set. I'm not sharing screen just because it has the emails for other orgs, but K-Money, I'm looking at your application here, if there's any red flags or anything. Ken, I might email you just to put something on record since you guys have been around a while, but there were some complications in the fifth. I don't see like a lot of verbiage on that. It's not the end of the world, but I don't want to slow you down when I score these.
Hmm.
You might see an email come through from me. Let me just verify. I'm not going to say it because this is a recorded line. Let me just find that email here. All right. I got your email at the chain up. If there's
Yep.
anything, I'll blast that and get you set up, but it should be good. Previous allocator, previous notary. It should be pretty straightforward. Sweet. Oh, what is chain up? The only reason I ask is because the email doesn't match the org. That'll be another question that I have to come back on.
Is the parent company.
Okay, make a note of
Yeah.
that.
We provide all different kind of blockchain services, development, investment, um,
Yeah,
validator nodes, different services, storage providing.
sweet. Yeah, I put a note here so that'll fast track it. Sweet. I'll get you guys set up. We also have IL1. I don't know who that is here on the line. Is there anything I can get for you, buddy? Anything I could run down, answer, kind of go forward for you? We'll take the silence as golden. We're just not going to walk through the slides because the recording this morning, we had Galen really well said as we went through it. So just kind of taking the time, any kind of questions or troubleshooting. If you need the slides, they're in Slack. The big updates were just the KYC email needs to match, working on the zero retrieval, and kind of getting it set up. Too easy. Sometimes these are set. All right, then Kenneth, what I'll do is I'm going through these one by one. It's super time consuming, but I'm batching them. I've got the email from the parent. Once that KYC goes through, I'll finish with that for you guys and get you set up. Yeah, thumbs up. I always feel like I'm talking with royalty, like you're some high level Instagram TikToker with that background. I'm like, oh man, some super party this guy's at. And I'm just here in my sister-in-law's basement. So you're doing it right. You're doing it right. All right. I1L. If there's anything I can get for you, please let me know. Otherwise, we might wrap the call a little bit early, but I want to make sure that I get you anything that you're curious for. All right. If anything comes up, just send me a Slack. I'll be happy to help. But we'll kill it. I'll still hang on the line. I'll join back up if anyone joins. I'll get the Zoom notification. But hey, thanks for coming. Cheers to the second call. All the best.